Christ is in our midst. Welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics. Today, on August 10th, we commemorate St. Laurence, the holy martyr and Archdeacon of Rome, St. Chitus of Athens, Bishop of Rome, Hippolytus, the martyr of Rome, and let's get right into St. Laurence. This saint, who was born in Spain, was the Archdeacon of the Church of Rome, caring for the sacred vessels of the Church and distributing money to the needy. About the year 257, a harsh persecution was raised up against the Christians by Valerian. Pope Sixtus, who was from Athens, was commanded to worship the idols and refused. Before his martyrdom by beheading, he committed to Laurence all the sacred vessels of the Church. When Laurence was arrested and brought before the prefect, he was questioned concerning the treasures of the Church. He asked for 3 days' time to prepare them. He then proceeded to gather all the poor and needy, presented them to the prefect, and said, "Behold, the treasures of the Church." The prefect became enraged at this, and gave command that Laurence be racked, then scourged with scorpions, a whip furnished with sharp iron points, then stretched out on a red-hot iron grill. But the courageous athlete of Christ endured without groaning. After he had been burned on one side, he said, "My body is done on one side, turn me over on the other." And when this had taken place, the martyr said to the tyrants, "My flesh is now well done, you may taste of it." And when he had said this, and had prayed for his slayers in imitation of Christ, he gave up his spirit on August 10th, the year 258. Your martyr, O Lord, in his great contest for you, received as the prize the crowns of incorruption and life from you, our immortal God. For since he possessed your strength, he cast down the tyrants, and wholly destroyed the demon's strengthless presumption. O Christ God, by his prayers save our souls, since you are merciful. A flame in the heart, O Laurence, with the fire divine, thou burnest away the fire of passions utterly. O firm staff of athletes, O thou God-bearing martyr, and thou in truth, while contesting, didst cry with faith, "Nothing shall separate me from the love of Christ." Going into Wednesday, on the 9th Wednesday of Pentecost, St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. Brethren, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Now, I have seen this used in many a wedding service outside of the church, and this unfortunately is a mischaracterization of this passage in 1 Corinthians, because St. Paul is referring to the Corinthians because they have so many spiritual gifts, and he is trying to tell them there's a more excellent way when he says that, if I don't have love, I'm nothing. Now, what does this mean? The love that we're talking about here is not eros. It's not passionate love, the kind of love that a man has for his wife or a wife has for her husband. What we're talking about is agape. Agape literally means not me. Opposite ego, me. So selfless love. So selfless love is patient because it is looking for everyone else. It is kind. Selfless love is not jealous or boastful. It's not arrogant or rude because it's thinking about the other person. Selfless love does not insist on its own way because it literally is giving to the other person. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Selfless love bears all things because it makes allowances for other people. It believes all things, hopes in all things, endures all things. Selfless love never ends because selfless love is not just an idea or a concept. Selfless love is a person, Christ our God. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For our knowledge is imperfect, and our prophecy is imperfect. But when the perfect comes, the imperfect will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Now, this is important because St. Paul, who was raised under Gamaliel, one of the greatest minds of his time, was considered very wise by the Jewish scholars, but he considered that time of his life childish. Instead, he now sees the adult things, which is Christ our God, selfless love. For now we see in mirror dimly, but then face to face. In other words, when our nous, our inner mind, our mind's eye, is so clouded with the worldly things, we can't see. It's as if we're looking through a mirror that's dirty. Yes, you can kind of see an image, but it's dim. But when we adapt perfect love, when we take on the personhood of Christ and his qualities, then we are literally seeing him face to face in the other person. Now I know in part, then I shall understand fully, even as I have fully been understood, because Christ knows us fully. So faith, hope, love, abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love. Make love, selfless love, your aim, and earnestly desire the spiritual gifts, especially that you may prophesy. For one who speaks in a tongue speaks not to men, but to God. For no one understands him, but he utters mysteries in the Spirit. On the other hand, he who prophesies speaks to men for their upbuilding and encouragement and consolation. He who speaks in a tongue edifies himself, but he who prophesies edifies the church. Now I want you all to speak in tongues, but even more to prophesy. He who prophesies is greater than he who speaks in tongues, unless someone interprets, so that the church may be edified. Now the problem is that people look to the idea of speaking in tongues as this like private language, that a language that the devil can't understand, and that's actually not accurate. I remember a story of a bishop from Africa who was a priest at the time when he was at seminary with me. And he wanted to see one of those Pentecostal churches where people speak in tongues. And so he went with two seminarians that drove him there. And they saw all the people speaking and la 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 and dancing around. And the two seminarians were giggling and laughing to themselves. But the priest was getting further and further upset. They could see that his face was darkening, his countenance was going down. They said, "Father, what's wrong? Don't you find this humorous?" And he said, "No, I don't." He said, "Why?" He said, "Do you see that little boy over there?" They looked and saw that he was pointing to a college-age, blonde-haired boy who was, like everyone else, speaking in tongues. And he said, "Do you think that this boy has ever been to my continent or my country?" And they said, "No, probably not." He said, "Well, he's speaking Swahili, and he's blaspheming God." What this tells us is that we, as St. Porphyrius says, are like radio transistors. We're picking up signals. But what comes out of us, unless we have someone to interpret, unless we are able to understand what it is, might not be from God. And so we have to be careful. Continuing into the Gospel of the ninth Wednesday of Pentecost according to St. Matthew, the Lord said this parable: "The kingdom of heaven is like a householder who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them out into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. Them he said, 'You go into the vineyard too. Whatever is right I will give you.' So they went. Going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing. And he said to them, 'Why do you stand here idle all day?' They said to him, 'Because no one has hired us.' He said to them, 'You go into the vineyard too.' And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to the steward, 'Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first.' And when those hired at about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the householder, saying, 'These last men worked only an hour. You have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or is your eye evil because I am good? For the last will be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" Now, when we hear this gospel, it sounds unfair at first. But when we look deeper, we understand greater, for the reward of heaven is the same for all. However, that's only if we start looking at it at that mercenary concept of a reward or a payment, as it were. Because what is the real paradise? It is a relationship with Christ, being with Christ. And so all of us should hope that we can have that reward, to have a relationship with Christ. Now, some people, by God's grace, they have that relationship from their childhood. Others, unfortunately, don't. And some of them do not receive that relationship until literally the last hour. This is why we put so much emphasis on the thief on the cross who says, Lord, remember me in paradise. The idea that even on death's door, it is not too late for us to repent. It is not too late for us to receive the kingdom of heaven, to have that relationship with God. And so we need to stop having this mercenary outlook of looking down at other people because they have not labored from the beginning as we have, or they have not done the things that we have. Your relationship with God is your relationship. You have made for your life is with you and God. It does not matter what someone else is doing or what they are being paid or how they are receiving. We could look to all the gifts that we receive from God and say, well, why did he get this and I got this? It's not for us to say. It's for us to do the best we can with what we are given and to be cognizant of our personal relationship with Jesus Christ, our God and Savior. And as we develop that personal relationship, we draw closer to him. And when we draw closer to him, all these other things don't matter because our joy is in being with the person who loves us, who knows us. As St. Paul said in his letter to the Corinthians, he understood me. He knows me. Nothing greater than that, than to be with someone who knows you and loves you, and you in turn can love them. I hope that you've enjoyed today's Spiritual Calisthenics. Have a blessed and wonderful day.